Hey there, fantasy football fans. If you're looking to gain an edge in your fantasy football league this season, you are in the right place. NFL Preseason Week 1 is in the books, and we've already seen some breakout performances, as well as some players who failed to live up to the hype. In this video, we're diving into the biggest winners and losers from the first week of preseason action, and trust me, you don't want to miss who made the cut. From quarterbacks making a name for themselves to running backs who may be slipping down the depth chart, I've got all the insights you need to make the smartest moves in your fantasy league. Stick around until the end to find out which player is a must-have for your draft and who you should be avoiding at all costs. Let's jump right in with the biggest quarterback winners for the week, starting with CJ Stroud. Stroud didn't play much in this game, but he really didn't need to because he picked up from last year and he completed 2 of 4 passes for 41 yards, including a touchdown to Tank Dell. He's going off as the 5th wide receiver off the board right now, and while that's a little high and I'm a little bit worried about him returning that value at the end of the season, I'm still optimistic that he's going to have another breakout season this year. Joe Burrow had a nice series as well, completing 5 of 7 passes for 51 yards, including a touchdown to T. Higgins. He looks sharp in his limited amount of work, and he's going off as the 7th quarterback off the board right now. Jaden Daniels was 2 for 3 for 45 yards in his debut, including a 42-yard bomb to Diami Brown, and he scored on a 3-yard rushing touchdown on a read option. It's limited action, obviously, but this guy looks like he might be a value at quarterback 14. Caleb Williams also looked sharp in his first action of the season, going 4 for 7 for 95 yards. In addition, he also had 1 rush for 13 yards. He looked good, and right now his ADP is the 15th quarterback off the board. As a QB2, I think you could do worse. Will Levis played 14 snaps in his first 2 drives, and while he didn't do anything really crazy, he did go 4 for 5 for 35 yards, and he led the Titans to 2 touchdowns. So it was not a terrible start for him, and one of those touchdowns was actually a 1-yard rush from him, a quarterback sneak. So again, he's quarterback 23 off the board right now, so you're not spending a lot of draft capital on him. It might be a decent second quarterback at the back end of your draft. Bo Nix got a lot of snaps this week, and he completed 15 of 21 passes for 125 yards, plus a touchdown, and he also had 3 rushes for 17 yards. While he did show a little bit of that arm weakness this week that he was kind of known for in college, and it's clear that he's not going to be a deep ball threat throughout the season, he still showed a lot more than Jarrett Stidham, who was absolutely abysmal to watch. And finally, our last winner of the week at the quarterback position is Michael Penix. Penix is probably not really draftable for you unless you're in maybe a best ball league. So if you're in a best ball league, you're drafting 3 quarterbacks, and maybe you already have Kirk Cousins, then Michael Penix might not be a bad option for you because he's going off as the 33rd quarterback off the board at 262 overall. So you can get him way deep in your draft. And especially if you've got Kirk Cousins on your team, nobody else is really probably even going to want to draft Michael Penix. This week, he completed 9 of 16 passes for 104 yards, which included a 41-yarder down the right sideline. And considering his average depth of target was 8.6 yards, he wasn't dinking and dunking like Bo Nix out there. All right, so my losers at the quarterback position, we're going to start with Anthony Richardson. And I know a lot of you don't want to really hear that. And look, it's limited action. It's very limited. He only played 7 snaps over 2 series in this game. Those 7 snaps, he didn't look great. He completed 2 of 4 targets for 25 yards. He had 1 rush for 1 yard, and one of his 4 passes almost got picked off. Not a great start for him. Hopefully there will be better days to come in the next week or 2, but we'll see what happens. Justin Fields got the start in the Pittsburgh game, and yeah, it was Justin Fields. I mean, it's kind of what we're used to from him. He completed 5 of 6 passes for 67 yards. He also fumbled twice while taking snaps under center, something that he's not really used to doing, I guess. And he also took a couple of sacks, so he didn't look great out there. He's the 25th quarterback off the board right now, so you're probably not drafting him anyway. I'm probably staying away from him, to be honest. And J.J. McCarthy, this one's actually very disappointing because initially in my notes, I had him as a winner for week 1 because he looked really good out there. Based on the first week of preseason, I would have said he was probably going to be the starter in, I don't know, the 5th, 6th week of the season. But now who knows, because the news came out on Tuesday that he's having to have surgery on his knee. So I don't know. It's a little scary situation, and it means that we're going to have to deal with Sam Darnold for who knows how long in the beginning of the season. Derek Carr is my next loser for this week, and he went 2 of 6 for 12 yards over his 2 series that he played, and it looked like normal Derek Carr football. The one biggest thing that I saw in this game as I was watching it, that line is absolutely awful. So he's going to be running for his life every play, it seems like, and that's definitely not going to help his fantasy value. He's going as the 29th quarterback off the board right now. I would probably drop him down a little bit just based on that offensive line. And then Las Vegas, I'm going to put both of them. I'm going to put Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew on this list as losers because neither one of them really took the reins. I have no idea who's going to be the starting quarterback for this team, and honestly, I don't really care because I'm not going to draft either one of them. All right, let's move now to the winners at the running back position, starting with Isaiah Pacheco. Now, Pacheco Pacheco, we all kind of knew was going to get the start and was going to play alongside all of Patrick Mahomes' snaps, and that's exactly what happened. But the really good news and the thing that I really liked seeing on this is there were 4 dropbacks that Mahomes had, and Pacheco ran a route on every single one. So that's great usage for him. It's not like last year where he was constantly coming out to have somebody else go in passing down situations. So that's a great thing for Isaiah Pacheco and could really help his value. Right now, he's going off as the 12th running back off the board. He's not really somebody that I've been drafting a lot of, to be honest, but if he's there in the 3rd round and I'm kind of stuck and I don't have any other better option, then it might not be a terrible choice. If you're enjoying this video, please smash that like button down below and leave me a comment, because those 2 things, along with you watching all the way through to the end, go a long way towards this video reaching more people. And if you want to see more videos like this, then hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. James Cook is kind of a similar one to me in his first week of usage, because he was on the field for all 9 of Josh Allen's snaps. He ran a route on 4 out of the 5 dropbacks that Josh Allen had, so it wasn't really bad usage for him, at least in the beginning. Right now, he's running back 14 going off the board, so kind of the same thing with Pacheco. If I'm near the end of round 3, maybe I'm looking at him if I don't have a running back yet. And Javonte Williams is my next winner. Now, Javonte, I've been worried about all offseason. I have not drafted much of him at all in any of my drafts because I just don't really know what to expect. The problem I have with Javonte Williams is not his talent, because he's clearly a talented guy. And it looks like in the first week, he looks much better than he did last season. I know it's limited action. He only played, 9 out of the 12 snaps that Jarrett Stidham was out there. So he didn't have a ton of usage, but he did look better than what he looked like last year. Last year, he looked a little sluggish and whatever. My biggest problem with Javonte is going to be Sean Payton, because we don't know what that's going to look like during actual games. Sean Payton loves to just cycle through running backs. And so Javonte may have to go through the same thing that he did last year, where he can't really get into a rhythm because he's constantly being pulled out and replaced with Samaje Perine or even Jaleel McLaughlin. And now, or now you got Audric Estime in the mix. So who knows what kind of usage he's actually going to get. So the good news on Javonte is he's RB 34 going off the board. And right now his overall ADP is 91. So you're only really spending an 8th round pick to try to get him. Again, I don't know that I'm going to do it right now, but it's a nice start to the preseason. Let's see what the next couple of weeks do. And if he doesn't move up in ADP and he kind of stays right around that 8th yard mark, it might be a value, but let's hold off for right now. So Trey Benson in Arizona, so he had 8 carries. He only got 26 yards. So that part's not great. The good news for him is, first of all, they didn't start their starting offensive line, so he was kind of struggling behind some linemen who were struggling with actually blocking. But the really good news is that he did start in place of Michael Carter, so it kind of cements the fact, what we all kind of figured going into it, is that he might be the main handcuff to James Conner. And that's a pretty good place to be, is handcuffing a back that's, I don't even know how old James Conner is. They're 29, 30, somewhere in there. Whatever it is, he's old. Now in Miami, Jalen Wright did not get the start. That was Jeff Wilson. But Jalen Wright looked a hell of a lot better to me than Jeff Wilson did, which kind of makes sense. This once again just cements in my mind why I am absolutely not going to draft Devon Achane, not where he's going off the board right now, because you got Jalen Wright right now, who is going off the board at RB 46, 139 picks into the draft, and he's going to get the ball, at least to a degree. So you got Raheem Mostert, you got Jalen Wright, you got Devon Achane. How in the world is Devon Achane going to get enough usage to actually support the fact that he's going off the board at the end of the 2nd round? It just doesn't make sense to me. Ty Chandler's a guy that I have been drafting a lot in my drafts, because right now he's the RB 47. He's going off the board at 136 picks in. So you're like, what is that, 12th round? You're taking Ty Chandler. He played all 12 snaps with Sam Darnold, so he's clearly the backup running back to Aaron Jones. And it's kind of like with backing up James Conner, I want to be the guy. I want to have shares of the guy who's backing up Aaron Jones, because when was the last time Aaron Jones made it through a full season without getting hurt? I can't remember. I want Ty Chandler on my team, especially if I'm doing a 0 RB draft, which I've been doing a lot of these days, or maybe 0 RB or sometimes hero RB, where I draft 1 running back in the beginning. I need a guy like Ty Chandler in the 12th round, because if he does get in and he does get to play, he's probably going to return value for you. So Bucky Irving is another guy that I haven't really drafted a lot of this season. I haven't really been a big Bucky Irving guy, but he actually looked pretty good in this game. He had 6 carries for 28 yards, 4.7 yards per attempt. He did score a touchdown, and it's looking more and more like he's probably going to be the number 2 back on that team. So it's not a terrible place for him to be. He's behind Rachaad White, and we saw last year that Rachaad White he's good, but he's not a great running back. So, for them to take him off the field every once in a while and put Bucky Irving on is not completely out of the question. We'll see what happens. All right, and then my last winner this week at the running back position is Braylon Allen. I wasn't sure going in. I don't know if you were, but I wasn't 100% positive who was going to be the actual handcuff to Breece Hall. But it seems clear by his usage in week 1. He started the game, and he looked really good. He had 6 carries for 54 yards, so 9 yards per attempt. And he looked really good in the process. I was very, I enjoyed watching that game. Let me take that back. I enjoyed watching him run in that game. The rest of the game, maybe not so much, but that part I really did enjoy. And the good news on him is he's going off as the 57th running back off the board right now. So he's 175 overall. I can't do the math in my head that fast, but that's way far down the draft. All right, and the losers at the running back position. So first we're going to start with DeAndre Swift. Now, it was weird. It was a strange game. He started the game. He got 1 carry for the very first snap, and then he came out of the game. Khalil Herbert came in, played for a while. Then DeAndre Swift came back in for 1 play. He ran a route. He caught a pass. It was a 42-yard reception. So that part looked really good, and then he came out of the game again. So my question for him is right now he's going off the board as the 22nd running back off the board. So he is right at the end of the RB2s. It's scary because we don't really know what his usage is going to look like, and we don't know if it's going to be anything like week 1. We might get some clarity in week 2 or week 3. Hopefully we'll see who actually plays for the Bears, but I don't know. That was terrifying, the way that they used him, because it didn't look like a starting running back usage to me. The other thing that scared me about him is on 3rd down, he wasn't the 3rd down back. It was Travis Homer. And is it going to be Travis Homer during the regular season? Who knows? But Travis Homer does have a relationship from their days back in Seattle with the offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see what happens. My next loser at the running back position this week is Marshawn Lloyd. Now, look, if you're running a dynasty league, I absolutely want to have Marshawn Lloyd. Okay, but for redraft, for best ball, for this season only, I would stay away from Marshawn Lloyd. Right now he is going off the board. The good news is he's the 49th running back off the board, so you're probably not worrying about him early anyway. But he was the 4th running back to come into the game for the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't look great when he was there. And now he's got a hamstring injury, so who knows? I mean, I'm kind of staying away from that one for right now. And then the last one I've got on the list here is Tyrone Tracy, and it makes me very sad because actually this is another one where I had Tyrone Tracy as a winner. And I was going to talk about him during the winner section because he looked really good during that game. I mean, it was a very tough game to watch, but his part of it looked good. I think there was a really good chance he was going to be the backup to Devin Singletary. And maybe he still will further down the season, but then news broke today during practice that he went out. He had a leg injury. They put him in an air cast. They're saying it's not necessarily as bad that they initially thought it was, but the last news that I heard prior to shooting this is that he is week to week at this point. So I don't know what that means. An air cast is always scary, and so I don't really know what to do with him right now, but it sucks because I've been drafting a lot of Devin Singletary, and therefore I've been drafting a lot of Tyrone Tracy crazy late, like 18th, 19th round in the draft. I was picking him up to back up my Devin Singletary investments, and now I don't know. That's probably going to hurt me. So now let's jump to the winners at the wide receiver position, starting with Xavier Worthy. He ran a route on 3 of 4 Mahomes dropbacks, so that's obviously good. But the bigger news is the Marquise Brown injury and the fact that he is now week to week. We'll see how long he actually misses and if he actually misses into the regular season. But anything like that is probably going to, it can only help Xavier Worthy. The thing with him, though, is so he's going off right now at 41 overall. If you can get him at that spot, that's great. great. But my worry is at this point, he's probably moving up the draft board. So we'll see where he eventually lands out. If he gets up too high and all of a sudden he's like a wide receiver 3 or something like that, I don't know if I want him as a wide receiver 3. I'd much rather have him as a wide receiver 4. Another winner this week was Keon Coleman. He was out there for every Josh Allen snap, whereas Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel kind of rotated in 2 wide sets. So he was out there for every single one. And the news coming out of training camp on him has been glowing so far. And he's going off the board as the 45th wide receiver right now. So he's 101 picks in. He is a 9th round pick. I will spend a 9th round pick on a guy like Keon Coleman that may turn out to be the wide receiver 1 for Buffalo. Brian Thomas is another one that I haven't drafted a lot of, but the news on him is pretty good after week 1. He was out there for every snap with Trevor Lawrence. He didn't catch any passes from Lawrence, but he did catch a 41-yarder from CJ Beathard that looked really good. So if this usage holds up, it's hard to ignore him because he's one of the starting wide receivers for Jacksonville, and he's right now the wide receiver 49. So A.D. Mitchell is another winner for me, not because of what he did in the game, or at least not because of catches and things like that, but it was because of his usage. So he was the wide receiver 3 coming in. Josh Downs is hurt right now. We all kind of know that, but it was his usage on the field. So he had 6 snaps in the slot and 5 out wide. So he can kind of move around all over the place, or at least that's what they're doing with him. And that's encouraging for this guy. He is right now the wide receiver 62. I've been taking him a lot in the 14th round or whatever. You can get that late kind of, hopefully it works out kind of a pick. And yeah, it's kind of worth doing. And Dontavian Wicks, okay, this is probably my most drafted late wide receiver so far this season. I've been taking him everywhere because you can get him crazy late. He's wide receiver 65. He's going off at 173 overall right now. That's not going to stay after this first week. He's going to be moving up draft boards. So you need to get him late if you can, but he came into the game to relieve Christian Watson, which by the way is another one that I always want to be the backup to. If I can be I can't, but if I could have someone who is the backup to Christian Watson, that's a great place, because how often is Christian Watson healthy? Who knows? Maybe he will be. I don't know. But I'm not going to bet on that, and I'm going to bet on the guy who's backing him up, which is Dontavian Wicks. And he did have a 65-yard touchdown from Jordan Love. So very, very bullish on him. Want many, many shares of him, and I have many, many shares of him. So there's that. Next up, we have Andre Yoshavash, and this one pains me because I have drafted Jermaine Burton in not nearly as many as Dontavian Wicks, but I have drafted my share of Jermaine Burton. And in a dynasty league, Jermaine Burton is probably your guy. For this season, I don't know if he's going to be the guy. It looks like more and more the news coming out of camp, and now the usage in week 1 of the preseason, it's looking more and more like it's going to be Andre Yoshavash. He looked pretty good, and it's kind of like A.D. Mitchell's usage. He was splitting time between out wide and in the slot. So that versatility, I mean, obviously they're looking for somebody to be their number 3 wide receiver. And I don't know. It's starting to look more and more like it might be Andre Yoshavash, at least in the beginning of the season. We'll see what happens later on. And Jermaine Burton might be one of those guys that you don't draft for right now and then wait and pick him up, week 6, week 7, something like that, and maybe he starts to come on. Or if somebody else drafts him, maybe you can trade with him or whatever down when he's not doing anything the first few weeks. You can steal him away or wait for them to drop him and then pick him up. That might be a better thing to do with Jermaine Burton, because right now on draft boards, Jermaine Burton is actually going over him. So Jermaine Burton is the wide receiver 79. Andre Yoshavash is the wide receiver 105. I picked him up a couple of nights ago in the 20th round of a 20-round draft. So yeah, you can get him as late as you want to get him. And if he does turn out to be the 3rd wide receiver for Cincinnati, I mean, that's a steal in the 20th round of your draft. Van Jefferson. Okay, so yeah, based on his usage in week 1 of the preseason, it looks like he's the wide receiver 2 for Pittsburgh. That's the good news. The bad news is his offensive coordinator is still Arthur Smith, which we saw what happened last year. And the wide receiver 2 for Atlanta was Mac Hollins. He had 30 targets the entire season. So who knows what's going to happen with this offense and whatever. You can get Van Jefferson at 117 wide receivers off the board. He's at 419, so nobody's even drafting him overall. Yeah, probably just don't draft him. But again, it is definitely an upgrade to the fact that he is probably the wide receiver two for right now. Although I'm seeing trade rumors right now that there may be the Brandon Ayuk trade going through to Pittsburgh. So I'm filming this on Tuesday afternoon. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if Brandon Ayuk ends up there. If so, then completely forget all about Van Jefferson. If not, and you're in the 26th round of your draft, maybe, I don't know, then you have like a really long draft, then maybe pick him up. Same thing with Tim Patrick. So yeah, technically based on usage, it looks like he might be the wide receiver two for Denver. What does that mean? Does that mean a whole lot? Probably not, but I'm going to list him here as a winner because I didn't expect him to be the wide receiver two for Denver, to be honest. Ray McCloud, though, is one that I'm a little bit more excited about because he is in line now after the Rondale Moore injury. He's in line to be the third wide receiver, the slot wide receiver for Atlanta. And based on the first game, so Michael Penix was out there for 24 snaps. 23 of those 24 snaps, they were in 11 personnel. They had 3 wide receivers on the field. If that's how they're going to play, if that's what this offense is going to look like, then your slot receiver in Atlanta is actually going to be worth something. So Ray McCloud, who right now is the 139th wide receiver off the board, is worth your 20th round pick or even your 19th round pick to make sure that you get him. He's worth that. As long as everything stays the way that it is right now, he's looking like a real value. Okay, this one is deep for the Rams. Okay, rookie wide receiver Jordan Whittington, which is wide receiver 239 right now. He actually had a pretty decent game. He caught 6 passes, 6 of 9 for 74 yards. Looked good. It's the first week of preseason, so who knows what that actually means. Although Sean McVay did kind of talk him up after the game. So I don't know. We'll see what it is, and if that's anything. It's probably not. It's a very deep wide receiver room in Los Angeles, so it probably doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot. But I don't know. If you're in a 28 round rookie only league, it's a name to know. All right, now my losers at the wide receiver position, starting with Christian Kirk. It's not completely unexpected because he kind of had the same role that he had in the beginning of last season, where he's only coming out in 3 wide sets. But for where he's going right now, he's the 31st wide receiver going off the board. He is a wide receiver 3. I haven't drafted him. I don't think I've drafted him at all this season. I don't even know how many drafts that I've done at this point. A lot. But I haven't even taken him once. And yeah, I'm worried about him kind of returning value at that, especially now. But if this holds and Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis are the 2 starting wide receivers in 2 wide sets, then you have to be worried about waiting for that slot opportunity to come in for Christian Kirk to come out. He's a slot wide receiver and he's better in that position, but that kind of usage is not going to be great for your 31st wide receiver pick off the board. My next loser is Quentin Johnston, and hopefully you're not drafting him anyway. Like, he's another guy. I haven't drafted him a single time, but I hear people talking him up, and I'm like, why? Like, okay, so Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey, they didn't play at all. So they're clearly at the top of the depth chart, right? So starting for the Chargers were DJ Chark, Brendan Rice, Simi Fehoko. Those were the starters. And then finally, Quentin Johnston came in on like the 3rd drive of the game. I mean, I'm not putting anything into that. He's wide receiver 72, which granted is way far down the draft board. Dude, just leave him off. Get somebody else because this guy looks like a complete bust. Maybe he comes out of it, but for right now, he looks like a complete bust coming out of college. Marvin Mims is another one that has to be a downgrade this week. He did start the game. He played the first snap. And then he came out, and he didn't come in again until like the 4th series of the game. He played well into the either the late 3rd or the early 4th quarter. So he was in there for a really long time, and he didn't really do much with what he had. So, I'm not really taking Marvin Mims anywhere. And Jonathan Mingo, I give up on Jonathan Mingo. I've had him in a dynasty league, and kind of been holding on to him and holding out hope that Jonathan Mingo might turn into something. And he was out there. He got the start because none of the starters actually started for, wow, that's a lot of starts in that sentence. But none of the starters actually started for Carolina. And so, yeah, he was out there and played, and he got targeted one time, and he just dropped it. It was an ugly, ugly drop. that just kind of tells you what Jonathan Mingo is. So yeah, just if you're holding on to Jonathan Mingo in a dynasty league, yeah, it's probably time to just forget about that dream. Plus, he's so buried on that depth chart that it's probably not even worth it. All right, so let's move to the tight end group and the winners here. We're going to start with Brock Bowers. Now, I'm choosing to look at Brock Bowers in a positive way this week. Now, Michael Myers actually played more than I thought he was going to, and Brock Bowers didn't get like the solid kind of start that we were all maybe hoping that he was going to get. But his usage looked really good. He played all over the field. He was in line. He was out wide. He was in the slot. He was in the backfield. He was all over the place during the time that he was in the field. So he was out there and ran a route for 5 of 10 dropbacks on the opening drive. So that's one less than Michael Mayer, which, again, that part of it is not really good. But I have to be really happy about the usage. And he had 1 catch for 25 yards right at the middle. If you haven't seen that, look it up somewhere, Google it or whatever. I can't show you on here because of copyright. But yeah, definitely look that up and try to find it because it was a thing of beauty. And it was one of those things that, especially if you're in dynasty leagues, like in my dynasty leagues, I think he was going like 2nd or 3rd in some cases overall in dynasty drafts. And yeah, you're really liking what you saw on that one play in particular, plus his usage. Ben Sinnott is another guy that I have taken a lot of shares of as my 3rd tight end in best ball leagues. Now, his ADP was really far down, and that's why I was able to get him as my 3rd tight end. He's now kind of starting to creep up, and right now he is the tight end 22 going off the board. So he is starting to move up draft boards, and I'm I don't want to go crazy on this, but he looked really good. He is still behind Zach Ertz and John Bates in that depth chart. He should be the more explosive of those 3, and based on what I saw in that game, he is the more explosive of those 3. So I'm betting my money on him if I can get him late in a draft. That's a great place to be. All right, so Mike Gesicki is another winner for me this week. He was out there for 5 of 7 dropbacks from Joe Burrow, and he played 8 snaps total, and 5 of those snaps he was in the slot. So it's kind of like Andre Yoshavash at this point. It's who's going to get the 3rd best receptions for that team behind Jamar Chase, behind T. Higgins. Who's going to be that 3rd guy to step up? And you can get Mike Gesicki right now as tight end 24. It's not a lot that you're spending in draft capital to get this guy. And if it turns out to be him, then and we've seen Joe Burrow produce with a tight end in the past. So if it can be Mike Gesicki, who never really panned out in Miami, maybe this is good news. And then my last winner at the tight end position is going to be Theo Johnson. So he did rotate a lot during his time in the game. He was rotating with Chris Manhertz, Daniel Bellinger, but Theo Johnson did have more dropbacks or more routes run during dropbacks than either one of those 2 guys. And so, I think it's positive. He did miss some time at the beginning of camp, but the news on him is starting to turn and get a little bit better. If I'm taking a shot on a Giants tight end, especially late in a draft, it's probably going to be Theo Johnson. And now the losers at tight end for week 1, starting with Cole Kmet. So Kmet was out there. He split time with Gerald Everett way more than I was hoping he was going to. Gerald Everett actually outsnapped him. He had 14 snaps. And Cole Kmet only had 11. And during his 11 snaps, sure, he was targeted twice. He did get 2 catches. That part's really good. But if he's going to be splitting time like that with Gerald Everett, I'm definitely concerned about that. All right, so my next loser at the tight end position this week is Pat Freiermuth. Now, look, he was out there. Okay, the positive on Freiermuth is he was out there and played and ran a route on 7 of Justin Fields' 9 dropbacks. That part is very, very positive. The bad news is he was rotating a lot with Darnell Washington and McCole Pruitt. So it kind of looks like what Arthur Smith did last year with Kyle Pitts and how he completely wrecked his value by taking him out of the game all the time and throwing in whatever random bench tight end that he happened to have laying around. He would just throw him out there. It kind of looks like that might be the same thing that's going to happen this year in Pittsburgh. And if that's the case, it worries me about Pat Freiermuth. And right now he is the 16th tight end going off the board. Again, I have a lot of shares of Pat Fryermuth, so I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that I'm just panicking in week 1 of the preseason, and that's all that it really is. And it turns out that that's not what's going to happen during the season, but we shall see. And it would not be the first time that Arthur Smith has dashed my hopes and dreams on a tight end. So we'll see. Greg Dulcich is another one that I'm just staying away from. He's the tight end 32 right now. He's splitting time in week 1 with Adam Troutman, kind of like last year. Plus, you have all of the injury history with Dulcich and everything else. Just stay away from him for right now. And then Jelani Woods is another one for me that, a lot of people like the idea of Jelani Woods, but there were 3 tight ends that played with Anthony Richardson during the first preseason game, and Jelani Woods was not one of them. So that's bad, and that's a little scary. Just stay away from him. The bottom line, though, is for all of these guys, it's important to look at what happens in week 1, but it's much more important to actually have a strategy going into your draft. And if you want to learn about that, then click on this video right here and watch it. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you want to know what's going on here, then click right there. I would really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next one.